And just to set up for the presentation we're about to hear, Butte County has long been committed to building a school-based mental health strategy that intentionally integrates the objective services and resources of multiple student support services initiatives in California. For example, in some of the districts, the multi-tiered system of support, the MTSS framework, has become the basis for designing services that can be billed using the fee schedule. The vision for service delivery involves certifying and building the capacity of wellness coaches. A strategy will also incorporate expanded learning program time and the evolving community schools work with the goal and impact of substantially increasing students' access to mental health service supports. So this approach, emphasizing partnership between the leaders of each initiative in the county as they co-design mental health services and supports, helps to institutionalize the innovative programming that has been catalyzed by these initiatives and ultimately creating a no wrong door, sustainable school-based mental health infrastructure. So with that, I'm going to pass the mic to Matt Reddam, who will share about the inspiring work happening in Butte County. And there you go, Matt.
Well, look at this guy. Look at this fella. He looks important, doesn't he? Hey, how you doing? Chris gave me thumbs up. Hey, my name is Matt Reddam. All right, so I was thinking about what I would say. So I'm gonna put a timer on, and these folks know why, right? Like they just know why. So I was trained as a therapist. I did therapy work for a really long time, and my specialty was working with children and adolescents with a history of complex trauma and traumatic stress. And that was really the work I did for a long time. And as I talk about my county, I've been in Butte County since 1996. I had a little stint in Vermont until I got in my Volvo one day and it was 19 below. And I said, guess what? I'm going out west again. It's a little chilly here. So I left. But for the bulk of my career, I've been doing clinical work. And as you'll see, as I frame the existence of those of us who live in Butte County, disaster is a large part of the way we have been forced to live. Uncertainty is a large part of the way we are all currently living, but we are accustomed to that in a very specific way in Butte County. And I was thinking about the distance, right? Like the disparate distance at times it seems between the work I used to do and the work I'm doing now. Managing grants, trying to implement fee for service, navigating insurance codes, like things that I never thought I'd do. And so like it becomes hard for me sometimes to find that touchstone of the why. Like we talk about it, right? So it reminds me like a little bit of what I used to do as a teenager. I used to do this thing called wandering. Now all my friends knew what it was, but I would just like leave my house at night for reasons, right? And I would knock on the window of friends and they just kind of knew that it was me doing this, and they would open the window and I would sleep on their floor and they would ask zero questions and I would leave the next morning. And I've been reflecting on that because I oftentimes wonder, like, without that unconditional acceptance of those other kids, really is what they were, other children around me, I don't know that I'd be here today. And I think about the purpose of everything we are doing. And again, how disparate it can feel from opening a window for somebody you care about, but how critically important it is. If it wasn't a window that a student was knocking on, they could just go down the hall and talk to somebody who was well trained and cared for them, right? So at the center of everything I'm talking about is what feels like an urgent attempt to provide safety, to provide holding, reflection, things that we know kids from age 0 to 18 desperately need. And that the place they will most likely access it is where? At school. So, next slide. That's me. How you doing? Good to meet you. So I'm going to talk a little bit about um, what we have done in this county, what we are trying to do in this county. I want to start by saying, like, none of this could happen without my assistant, Michelle Zevley, our superintendent, Mary Sakuma, my colleague, Shirley Williams, my colleague, Scott Lindstrom. And actually, I was looking through folks like Kevin Douglas, people that have been in my life from Calusa, who I've gotten to know and love, right? Like, those are the people that continue to hold this work. Next slide. So I'm going to talk about like the sort of trajectory we have taken, and I'm going to start by just centering who we are. Butte County is considered semi-rural. There are parts of it like Chico that are considered urban, but come on now. Really? I don't know. But we are considered semi-rural. We have LEAs that are considered frontier. That doesn't mean people ride a wagon, but it means as close to that as you could possibly imagine. So we have 14 school district, 91 public schools. We have 18 charter schools. So those are our sort of characteristics of how we educate our folks. Since 2017, those of us who live in Butte County have experienced what feels like a relentless cascade of pressures, whether they be disasters, whether they be sort of the spearhead of climate, whatever you want to call it, they have been all encompassing for us. And they are impossible to separate these realities from the work that we're trying to do. In 2017, we had a spillway failure that led to the evacuation of the entire town of Paradise. No, not Paradise, of Oroville. So the entire city had to leave. The spillway is what controls the water flow from one of the largest earthfall dams in the United States. In 2018, we had the Camp Fire, the single deadliest fire in California history. That swallowed up the town of Paradise, most of Magalia, and surrounding areas. We then had the Bear in the North Complex fire, which burned down schools that we continue to work with today and that fortunately have been able to rebuild. We then experienced the Dixie Fire. My wife and I were on our honeymoon in 2021 watching a fire map. She is from the town of Greenville and she watched that town burn to the ground while we were at a Ritz-Carlton. That wasn't awesome. But this is a life we have become accustomed to in the North State. Then as we all experienced COVID-19, and then last year, the most recent fire was the Park Fire. This is the context in which we live and work and the uncertainty, right? I want to paint that picture very clearly because it speaks to the remarkable work that folks in this county have been able to do in spite of and sometimes because of these contexts. Next slide. So we really work from funding streams that began and arose out of disaster. The first is the Butte Strong Fund. Aaron Rodgers, North Valley Community Foundation, and others had money set aside for fire recovery. So what we did was we partnered with Paradise Unified and we placed counselors, clinicians, whether they ASWs, MFTs, whomever, into surrounding districts that had overflow students and into Paradise Unified School District proper. And the mandate of those folks was to be a safe, consistent adult that was there for students who needed them. What we found was something really interesting, right? Like if you provide just safe adults, regardless of whether they're doing evidence-informed practice or not, it mitigated the need for further mental health work, right? So we were shocked by how few sort of referrals we needed to specialty mental health after that point. And really what that came from is, I think, the fact that we just had safe folks that were sitting in front of students who needed them. This ties, I think, really closely to wellness coaching, right? So we'll talk about that. In 2021, we entered into the Mental Health Student Services Act through our local behavioral health. And the intent of that was to continue some of that work for especially some of our smaller charters who, without this funding, really wouldn't have any certificated folks, any clinicians, anybody who was strictly dedicated to mental health. And they still had a large number of students that were impacted by the fire, and they were continuing to be impacted by COVID and other realities. In 2023, we applied for a bipartisan Safer Communities, longest name ever, Stronger Connections grant through the feds. no, it didn't get taken away from us. And we applied to place 10 wellness coaches in schools that were participating in that. It's an 80% unduplicated, so it wasn't every school. At that time, like I'd love to tell you we had some brilliant plan of we saw wellness coaching coming and we wanted to build a bridge from this to this, but really we were just like, this seems like a really good idea. And so we did it. And so we really sort of were implementing and hopping on the wellness coach train before we really had any strong concept of what it was. And fortunately, we were lucky enough that the way we conceptualized it is the way we believe it aligns with what students most need. And lastly, we work with community school funding, which again isn't all of our schools in the county, but many of the schools that are involved in these other branches of funding, um, we're looking at how community schools can align with that, whether that be using that funding to continue working with wellness coaches, whether it means alignment through district initiatives. There's a lot of ways that folks are conceptualizing community school funding. So, Butte County Office of Education, and I would contend, like, I didn't know this, but Office of Educations as a whole were really not typically in the direct service game. That was not something BCOE did. After the fire, that changed. That changed. And a lot of the work we're doing now is through seeing the efficacy of those programs, seeing how they tend to make a difference, and really having something in place that is there when you keep getting sort of assaulted by disasters is really nice, right? A lot of the other work we do here, myself and Sherry Haney, who I work with a lot, we have responded to too many crises. Our team sort of goes out and we coordinate services, we meet with superintendents, we make sure that the staff, students, and families, when our schools experience a crisis, have what they need and walk them through that process. And again, as I said, we've been able to integrate wellness coaches in, I think, 7 different LEAs that we're working with. We were in cohort 1 for the CYBHI fee for service. Our rationale around that was we really wanted to get a sense of how this actually works, to work with our LEAs and to be able to explain to them the process of CYBHI and fee for service billing. We're now the centralized biller for 7 different districts. That's work. As an LEA doing it individually, it's a lot of work, but as a COE, we're finding that it is complicated. But we believe that that supplemental funding is going to be critically important as we move forward. And then we're consortium lead and the regional capacity grant lead for the capacity grants. Next slide. So one of the districts that we've been working with is Palermo Unified School District. And Palermo is, by all accounts, a relatively small district. It sort of sits outside of Southside Oroville. And Palermo, like sort of many of our catchment areas, is considered a designated mental health shortage area. Actually, everything above Sacramento is considered a designated mental health shortage area if you work and live here. That just means your access to mental health services, how far away from them you are, how easy they are to access, healthcare, mental health care. There's difficulty there. There are about 1,280 students. They're split into 3 different schools, which is really interesting. So they have a school that is UBK to 3, and then 4 and 5, and then they have a junior high, right? One of the really cool things that our wellness coaches and our team was able to do is to stand up what's called a primary intervention program for universal and pre-K to 3rd grade. So this is a non-directive play is one of the strategies. You can also do like friendship groups through that. But one of the things we like is this non-directive play, which is supervised by a licensed clinician. And what I love about it is it just matches their developmental stage. I think sometimes we throw interventions at school systems that do not match developmental age, and it doesn't yield the outcomes we want. We're really excited to see how that PIP program works out. And one of the really cool things, we've been working with Jeff Davis, who I think is on the call, through the California Afterschool Network. And we've been exploring this idea of how do we start to look at, and we'll talk about this a little more in a minute, like how do we look at truly integrating all of these funding sources, but how do we not wait for a crisis in our county to be creative, to stretch ourselves and to de-silo? Um, and again, we've been working in the Stronger Connections grant, I think for the past 2 years, 3 years now, 2 years. And so we have wellness coaches placed in high school districts, Orville Union High School District. We have them placed in Palermo. We have them placed in some rural schools, Berry Creek, and some others. And we're getting a really strong sense of what wellness coaching looks like in very diverse settings. One of the things we've been able to do through the Stronger Connections grant is Palermo is engaged in technical assistance with collective impact solutions around how do we begin to think about not only the use of our community schools funds, but how do we think about true alignment across a district? And whether that means like working with sustainability around wellness coaches, the type of SEL work we do, and I think one of the really cool things about the Stronger Connections work is it's broad enough that it allows us to be able to support the true needs of a district like Palermo. So if they need that technical assistance and it aligns with the grant, we've been able to do that. And so again, we have a wellness coach in Helen Wilcox, which is UPK 3. We have one in the 4-5, and we have one in the junior high. And those wellness coaches have done absolutely remarkable work. We dropped them. We got the grant. The GAN didn't get released. We got the grant in September. The GAN didn't get released till January. We dropped these poor folks on school campuses in March. Those of you who are in education understand how insane that is. Nobody knew what that job was. Nobody knew what they were yet. And we look now forward, and our wellness coaches have had over 6,000 contacts with students. They've touched and worked with 1,200, 1,300 unduplicated students. I mean, it is truly incredible what they've been able to do. We're super proud. Next slide. So again, like people come to us and ask us questions like, well, what do you do for training? I mean, we have just hustled, right? One of the things I will say, like, there was an intent, I think, on the part of the state, and I think it was a really smart one, which is we need to increase the workforce that is there for students, children, families in the state of California. We don't have enough certificated, we don't have enough licensed folks, right? So part of it was having folks that are sitting in front of students that are able to just focus on what they need for wellness. The other piece of that was workforce development. There was a hope that those folks would see the value in moving on in their education. I don't think we considered that, but I will tell you, we have 8, 9 wellness coaches. 4 of those are going back to school to get their degrees, like maybe 5 pretty soon. And through HCI, they can have funding, they can have loan repayment and some other things there. We've really seen that it is a natural fit within education, but it definitely takes a lot of work with the LEAs. And I would say one of the things that wellness coaching has taught us is the need for addressing secondary trauma and providing robust support to those folks, especially if they're hired by a COE and placed in another LEA. We meet with them every other Friday for 3 hours. We do secondary trauma work, we do training work. It's critically important. Next slide. So as we kind of look forward, right, we're doing a lot of stuff. And when sometimes you do a lot of stuff, you can easily sort of lose the strand, the large strand of what you're doing and why. And that's kind of why I started with the story I started with. Like, I think it's critically important that we come back to, yes, this is complicated, but the only way this gets done in a county our size is through relationship. That is it. It's through partnership. And what we have found is some of our programs have been successful and continue to be successful because of relationships we have had with our surrounding LEAs. Those relationships were bolstered because of what we have all been through. We really want to create a seamless system of support for youth. We want that system of support to include our extended and expanded learning programs, right? Like if you just take, for example, family therapy, how hard is that to do during the course of a school day? It's very, very, very hard. But now what if we imagined a world in which wellness coaching, in which fee for service included an additive part of the school day, right? Where many of our kids already are, right? How would that impact the ability for a family to engage in treatment? How would that impact a student's ability to sit with somebody and do wellness planning or get their Medi-Cal number or get connected to a support that they couldn't during the school day? So we have partnered with CAN and we're looking at how do we put all of this together in a way that creates a true system of care and truly no wrong door, right? Like we really believe in that. So we're looking at expanded learning funding, ELOP funds. We're looking at the multi-payer fee schedule. We're looking at California community schools funding. And we're really asking this question. It's like, what can we do to improve this system of care? And how do we really blend all of these opportunities to better serve our students? So next slide. I think the last part of that, the key strategy of balancing risk and patience, like to set up a system takes patience, but it also takes a high degree of risk. It takes doing something you have not done before. And I think that can be dicey, especially in the climate we're in, but we also think it's absolutely critical. Next slide. All right, so this is kind of a look at what we have, and I know I'm running up against time. I have 6 seconds, but what are we gonna do? Um, we're looking at how do we keep these programs going. Here's what happens in rural counties, and I'm gonna get a little spicy. Like, we get these grants, we serve students, and sometimes I lay awake at night and go, we have these great programs, we are serving students, but in the rural north, how do we sustain this? And is it better for students to introduce something effective and then yank it away because you can't sustain it? I don't know the answer to that, but part of what we were doing is really trying to braid those things together. So I really appreciate the chance to just talk a little bit about what we've been doing. We are continuing to look at sustainability. We're looking at COEs, Federally Qualified Health Center model. We're looking at any way we can continue having these amazing folks sitting in front of students who need them as often as they need them. So,
Well, Matt, knowing
yeah,
that you're wonderful and amazing, and we love listening to your program, we have the gift of time.
yeah.
And so efficient on the front end of our COP, we'd like to offer you more time to continue because you're bringing such beautiful, amazing information. So please carry on, sir.
So it all started when I was 14. I'm not going to do that to
Love
you.
it, love it.
I'm not going to do that to you. All right, so I'm a little talking about this. Here's the structure of our wellness coach. You want me to do that? It would have been funny if I just started telling my story. We have, at this point, we have 13 certified wellness coaches. So we had 8 through the Stronger Connections grant. And then we applied for the Workforce Capacity Grant, and BCOE added some other folks within BCOE who are going to be at our schools as wellness coaches. We really have 3 supervisors. So we have myself as a licensed marriage and family therapist. We have my colleague Shirley Williams, who's a PPS and a 30-year educator. We have Scott Lindstrom, who's also a PPS and was a school psychologist. We also have our team of clinicians who many of those folks are on site with wellness coaches and provide support. And then we have the lovely folks like OUHSD has two social workers, PPS social workers that are there, and they also work heavily with our wellness coaches. Like the reason why I think that has been effective is again relationship. It's predicting what we thought might go wrong when you dump somebody with an ambiguous sort of role definition onto an LEA site. Is you have to really clarify we don't want them chasing around eloping kids every day. We don't want them being a de facto one-on-one aid. We don't want them doing discipline. And really, they're not there as much for academic interventions. So as we look forward, we are looking at how do we braid all these things together? How do we provide this ongoing support? How do we take best practice from what we're learning about wellness coaches and truly create something that we don't have to worry about funding every single year. We don't have to worry about whether or not students will get what they need. We don't have to worry about whether there will be a window opened, right, to let somebody in. We believe that schools should be the center of wellness. We believe that they are ripe to do that. And we also believe that it takes time to get education ready for that. So, um, next slide. I don't know, is there a next slide? Next slide. I'm just super proud of being able to talk about this work. Whenever it comes out of my mouth, I always think it always kind of astounds me as well. So more specifically, we wanna like leverage after school programs, and we wanna see how we can include wellness coaching in this, because if you look at the work of many of our after school folks and the staff that work with kids when school ends until 6:30, so much of what they are doing is wellness work. So how do we provide the support to train them? How do we provide pathways and education that they can utilize that training? How do we leverage funding that is already there and in some districts is not being used with ELOP and put it towards what we believe is most necessary for students? And how do we braid these things to sort of meet in the middle? We're sort of at the beginning of this process, right? And one of the things that's really hard is all this money and all these opportunities have come at the same time. And so for smaller or medium-sized COEs, it's hard to pick through them. It's hard to stay on that strand. But we have also met so many incredible folks throughout the state that we believe have helped us with this process and will continue to, that we absolutely believe it's possible. So, next slide. These are all the acronyms I may or may not have used. Have fun with them. I think when you get into mental health or you get into education, you learn that acronyms are everything. So these are some of them that we've used. Jeff, did you want to hop on for a minute, or did you want to talk about some of the work we're doing? I don't want to put you on the spot, but I want to give you that opportunity.
I love being put on the spot. um, and always happy to share the good news about expanded learning. But I think that really the kind of the work that we're really looking at, and I've included a presentation there that myself and Danielle were able to offer as part of the multi-tiered system of support conference recently. But I think that, right, the foundational sort of philosophy that's moving us forward is that we have a lot of investments in California across multiple systems that are all aligned in terms of um, sharing the same outcomes, but being siloed within our systems. So it's been really great to bring multiple counties, including Butte, together and look at the capacity grants along with the system of support for expanded learning, along with the community schools technical assistance, right? And in some cases, the folks that are leading MTSS efforts um, and leadership within the county, and then to find their counterparts at a local district and to think about how county-based integrated technical assistance can support a more integrated district practice to leverage expanded learning as part of a way of increasing access to school-based mental health, but also sustaining things like community schools and MTSS strategies through that braid of expanded learning funding with the statewide multi-payer fee schedule and others, right? And I would say that as the presentation offers, we're really looking at a couple of primary strategies. And one is looking at the existing expanded learning staff, many of which are eligible to self-certify as wellness coaches today, and then build their capacity, including part of that capacity, how to bill, right? How to record your time in two different ways so that sometimes you're supported by expanded learning program funding and sometimes wellness coach funding. I think as Matt pointed out, a lot of the things that are happening in expanded learning programs are funded activities um, if they're implemented by folks that are certified wellness coaches. So that's a natural braid for sustainability right there. And then the second piece is really about co-locating the services. I think you heard Matt say, what if you had 3 extra hours a day or 5 extra hours on an early release day? What if you had 9 extra hours in the summer that you could increase access to school-based mental health all day, all year, right? This increases the number of billable opportunities, right? That not only creates sustaining the service, but also, as we've heard some folks begin to consider, that it can become a revenue generating strategy to braid some of these funds and to really provide more of these billable encounters by leveraging the platform of expanded learning. Again, more is included in that presentation, and Danielle and I are always available to talk through with anybody that would like to explore these types of strategies, because this is our work. So thank you, Matt, for the opportunity to jump in, and thanks for your great work and partnership.
No problem. Well, I appreciate y'all asking me to highlight my wonderful county, and I'm gonna close my mouth, but thank you all so much.
Matt, I'd like to add just one thing that on behalf of Butte County Office of Education, partnerships are critical to this work we do. And it just made me remember when we were going through the campfire, Brent, how you stepped up at Sacramento County Office of Ed. You came up and you helped us write grants to get mental health support in our schools. So you walk the talk, and I just appreciate it. And then we've been able to turn around and do the same. And Sonoma County office helping us. So us as county offices just supporting each other and helping each other is critical to the work. And thank you for being great partners.